This is Zestology, the new rules of health. Tony Wrighton here. And Zestology coming to you today from a very cold central London. I've just met Donna Lancaster. She used to be the head of training for the Hoffman Process and now runs the Bridge Retreat. And she is today's guest on Zestology. I think you're going to enjoy it because the Bridge Retreat is described as an emotional detox and a chance to rediscover your zest for life. I recognise that word zest from somewhere. This podcast is all about energy and vitality, isn't it? And so that struck me as being something very important, and spoke to Donna Lancaster about a year ago, a very, very popular guest and quite a kind of moving podcast. I think it shifted things for a lot of people. So in this podcast, we discuss Marie Kondo and decluttering, not just physical decluttering, but emotional decluttering as well. We discuss the inner critic and how to shut him or her up, or at least quieten him down a bit. I mean, that's the holy grail for me. If you can shut up the little voice in your head, it's just the dream, isn't it? Releasing emotional blocks, is it a continual process? Is it done once it's done? We discuss grief and how best to deal with it. And we don't have one, we don't have two, we have 3 book recommendations. Wow. Lots more as well. Make sure you check out the Bridge Retreat as well online. It's thebridgeretreat.com. I'm really hoping to go myself at some point, but regular listeners to this podcast will know I've got quite a lot on over the next couple of months, so it may not be for a little while. But here she is anyway, Donna Lancaster on Zestology.
Good. So yeah, if you see me scribbling, it's menopause and memory. So I just it comes and then it's boop.
Be careful because I'm recording now. Okay. No. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Excellent. It's nice to have you here because you and I have been talking about Marie Kondo quite a bit, haven't we? And the tidying up.
Yeah.
This bookshelf here
was
an absolute mess until I read the Marie Kondo book.
Very impressive.
And yeah, it looks better now, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but there was a lot of books on there that I'd never read. There was a lot of clutter. And we were talking about it when we were emailing, and you were saying that did you give away all your stuff? I
gave or sold all my stuff. So
wow.
Yeah, I definitely.
So what happened?
So I decided to leave the UK. I realised I hit this age where my children had left home and I was free to kind of live where I liked, and I have the luxury of a job where I can actually work anywhere to some degree. And then I decided to move somewhere warm. And
lovely.
Yeah. And so what I did was I got all my stuff together, and I think I said to you, I put it in storage, and I thought, I've got all these things, and this stuff is really important, and this is I paid a lot of money for this and all that. And then I went off and I lived abroad for 3.5 years, and then after the first year I came back paying a lot of money for the storage as well.
Yeah.
And I came back and I opened these doors, Tony, and I just looked at it and it was like, it's just stuff. And it's just stuff. And so I got rid of, I paid somebody. I didn't even go and sift through it in the Kondo style. I just paid somebody to get rid of it all for me.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so this is all really your possessions because you'd moved abroad and you hadn't taken them with you?
No, when I went abroad, I literally just took a suitcase of, essentials, clothes and toiletries and stuff. And like I said to you before we started recording, I never felt so free in my life.
Really?
I can't tell you. It was just so liberating to not have stuff.
Yeah.
And then it became almost quite addictive because I just didn't want to own anything. Even clothes, which I love. I had 3 dresses and a pair of flip-flops that I had on rotate. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to buy any stuff.
Yeah,
it was just so. It was like the ultimate decluttering, and it was internal.
Well, that's it, and that's probably Marie Kondo's thing, isn't it?
Yes.
You create space in your physical life, and that creates emotional space, mental space, everything else.
Totally, it was wonderful.
So what about now? How much stuff have you got now?
Well, very little, which is great. So I would say I definitely verge on the minimalist style of living. But I moved back to the UK, as you know. I became a grandmother, and so I moved back, and then to be with my family. And I just bought some essentials. So of course, I've got a sofa and this. But I made a choice, for example, not to own a television, much to my grandson's disgust. But but yeah, and then I just bought what I felt was essential. And that's what I live with is kind of the essentials, and a couple of memento-y type things that I never got rid of in my ultimate declutter, and that's it. And it feels, again, because I'm about to move in February, and it feels really, and people are saying, oh, you've got all the stress, and it's one of the most stressful events. It's like, not really. I mean, you could fit what I own into a small transit van, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one journey. So it feels very simple, actually, in that sense.
Yeah.
So still, I haven't built back up my clutter.
I think a lot of people have been... The book was very popular, but a lot of people have found, because of the TV show, that they're kind of talking more about Marie Kondo. There's been a bit of controversy because on one show she said, you shouldn't have more than 30 books, which I don't agree with. You have as many books as you like. I think that's important. But, a lot of people are kind of feeling quite liberated by throwing things out. It is nice.
Yes. Totally, and I agree with you. Like, it's quite random, isn't it? Why 30 books, or not 40? But and I love books, as well. But
it's like, when you come back to your space and there's not much in it. I can't quite work out why it is, but it does free up your mental space.
Totally, and I think we're so stimulated, aren't we? So we're so overly stimulated now. So to be able to come back to your space and have, just in your environment, minimal stimulation. Like in my bedroom, I'm really strict about it. I literally have my bed, bedside cabinet, lamp, etc., and there's a chest of drawers in my room, and that's it. There's no books, no clutter, no mirrors. It's really, and it feels a bit womb-like. So I get in there, and I'm, and I, like we talked about the need for sleep, and how important sleep is, and I just feel like it's like going back to my womb. It's going back to a womb when I go into my bedroom. No clutter.
Because my worst nightmare is these Alexa assistants.
Oh yeah.
I can't understand why people are so into them.
Yeah.
You know what it is, right? It's like a speaker, and you come in and you might close the door and say, Alexa, what's the latest news? What's the weather?
Yes.
But it's kind of listening all the time. And it's kind of it's all pervasive technology. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't.
I can't get my head around it.
No.
Or an Apple Watch. So even if your phone's in the other room, you're still getting your messages on your phone.
Yeah. No, it's not my cup of tea. I know I've been to people's houses when they are sort of saying they're talking to this, and it blows my mind, really. And I also, it's a bit like when the remote controls came in for television, and everyone was like, it's going to make us lazy, and it did. And I think it's a little bit, Alexa, turn the light on, Alexa, do this, and I don't know, it's not my cup of tea. And it does worry me about what impact that has on us, in terms of making us a bit more stupid. In terms of like there's a book, I can't remember the name of this guy, called The Shallows. I nearly bought that one for you actually today, Tony. And he says about how modern technology is making us, it's literally shrinking our brains, parts of our brains, because we don't have to, like map reading essentially. As one example. And so it concerns me that you can just go into a room and say, do this, do that, it's...
Well, there's never any time to think, is there?
No.
If I go to the loo, I'll take my phone with me and have a look at Instagram or something. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's quite a male thing. I don't know.
Isn't it?
Is it?
You must read. You must have a little look at if you go to the phone. Oh, hang on, that's the doorbell. Oh. 1 sec. Let's pause. Talking of clutter, got a couple of packages waiting downstairs for me.
Brilliant, perfect timing, Is that Alexa?
So you never look at your phone on the loo?
I have done on occasions.
On occasions.
At work, on occasions it has been known, but it does seem to me that men, it's like it used to be books that men read. Yeah. Whenever I would go to people's houses, because I used to work a lot going to people's houses and working with clients, and that sounds a bit dodgy, but you know what I mean. And they're always in the men's houses. There always used to be a stack of books back in the day next to their loos, and you didn't tend to find that in females. Right, that's my small, tiny case study.
No, I even like, if I didn't have a book, I'd just look at the shampoo bottle or something.
Got to keep that mind active.
Yeah, exactly.
Heaven forbid you might feel something.
I know. Well, there you go. You've got right to the root of it there. And actually, there's a famous ex-golfer called Nick Faldo, and he said that when he was a child, boredom was what made him such a great player, because he would spend hours imagining shots in his head, imagining how it felt, how it looked, what would happen to the ball once he hit it. And he said that made him the golfer that he is, which I love so much.
I think that's interesting because there's actually a book about parenting. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically saying children need to be bored. They need to learn and grow through being bored, and they're not allowed to be bored now.
Yeah.
There's constant stimulation. So I think there's a place for that, and I think also like what you're talking about is also visualizing different, and visualizing has been proven to be so important and so powerful. That's why so many sports coaches and etc. they use visualization to get the whatever athletes to imagine themselves hitting the perfect shot or running the perfect race or whatever over and over and over again, and it really does apparently it's very, very effective.
So we've just talked about physical clutter and mental clutter. Is this a clumsy link to say that emotional clutter is what you deal with people when people come to the bridge?
You followed the trail there. I didn't have that intention, but totally it is. It's called an emotional detox, or some people call it an emotional colonic, which I quite like. Getting rid of your shit. Am I allowed to say that? Yeah. But it's a real release of shit for sure. And I think that is so many people, they will deal with their kind of, physical clutter, their intellectual clutter, but actually to really dare and have the courage to face their emotional clutter, in inverted commas, is a struggle for many people. And of course, we live in a society that says be happy and try and be happy all the time, should. And so people are loath to work through what's labelled the darker emotions, the harder stuff, and that's what we deal with. Supporting people to do that so that they can actually really feel lighter, because any kind of decluttering leads to a feeling of lightness. Like me when I got rid of all my stuff, you when you got rid of your extra books, you kind of feel lighter and clearer, and that is what happens on the bridge. Is people leave saying, I feel lighter, we're not talking about weight, emotional weight maybe, and I feel clearer about where I'm going in my life and what I want and how I'm going to get that.
And sometimes I wonder if it's not necessarily even that it's too painful to confront or to deal with or to sort out, but just going back to what we were talking about before, there's just not the space. He's pushed away the whole time. So busy, aren't we, all the time?
Totally. I'm going to take my earrings out because they're jangling, and I'm worried that you're going to get these jangles on your... Will it pick it up?
Jangling's all right. I've got something on my wrist which just kind of keeps clunking.
So you don't mind the jangle?
No, don't worry. Keep it on there. It's fine.
As I'm nodding, I can feel this kind of jangle.
Well, people will know now if you're nodding and there's a jangle, they'll know what's going on.
They know what it is. Yeah. I think you're right. There's this constant stimulation, constant keeping busy, constantly surrounded by stuff and doing stuff. It just is there. It feels like there's no space. So of course, when people do have a holiday or a period of time off work to rest, the last thing often that they want to do is kind of go in there and do their inner work and feel their pain, anger, sadness and fear about what happened to them as a child, as an example. It's like, oh no thanks, I'll go in 2 weeks in Mauritius.
Exactly. But
I guess it's
you're trying to persuade people that a week in Somerset dealing with all their shit is easier and better for them than 2 weeks in Mauritius. Long term though, they really are going to enjoy it more. But
it's kind of the long term thing. It's like that. I don't know who said it.
Even the week itself, they'd finish. They'd remember that a lot more than they would Mauritius, wouldn't they? They genuinely would. But
that's what people say. It's like it's one of those weeks that they never forget. I don't think you would forget a week on the bridge in a hurry. That's for sure. But it is that thing also. What is it that saying? I can't remember it. That's something like wherever you go, there you are. And so it's the same. Like if you are carrying a lot of unprocessed sadness or anger about what happened to you, and then you go to 2 weeks in Mauritius, there you are with your sadness and your depression and your anger. So what we're offering is to really look at that, and to really not just cognitively understand it, but to process it so that you can kind of feel more of yourself, Tony. That's what it's about. Just being more of yourself. And that's really liberating.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I watched one of your videos, the inner critic one. And I think that's very interesting because sometimes you might be sad or you might be depressed or it might be lingering. It might be quite a long way beneath the surface, so you're not necessarily conscious of it. But with the inner critic, that's something that, you know, a lot of us can relate to. And you were saying that you don't really have an inner critic anymore, which I thought, I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah.
So so tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting actually, because I don't have an inner critic on a day-to-day basis, but recently we had the bridge, they made a documentary about the bridge, and watching myself, hello inner critic.
Oh right, it came out
on
again.
camera, yeah, it was definitely...
Shit, there might be a bit more work to
Yeah,
do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, and it's
Has that come out yet, the documentary?
No, not yet.
No,
we're just...
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted. But what I mean is, when the video that you saw, when I talk about not having an inner critic, I mean on a day-to-day basis. I used to function with this voice judging and berating me constantly. It was like criticising me, other people and the world. Not constantly, but it felt constant. You know what I mean? It was like, it was always there, lurking. Yeah. And sometimes very, very loudly. Yeah. And so what I was saying in that video is that it was... You know, it's just not there, Tony. Like I used to, if I stood up, which is part of my job, in front of people and talked about something, there was a little voice going, they're bored and you're making a bit of a tit of yourself. And, oh, Donna, really? You think that's interesting to these people? You know, it was like this little chip, 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 chip. Yeah. And I really don't have that. That's what I mean by healing. A lot of people
think that they feel like a fraud, don't they? You know, you might, especially when you get like a promotion at work, you're not used to that role of being like, you know, I mean, that's just an example, isn't it? But like, if you've just got a new role at work, people aren't used to you being at that level. And you yourself might not be used to it as well.
Yeah, and so you're talking about in terms of the critic then?
The inner critic. So telling yourself, I'm not... What am I doing here? Pretending to be someone who knows about all this stuff.
Ah, yeah, the imposter syndrome it's called.
Oh, is that it? Yeah.
It's like waiting for the tap on the shoulder and someone to go, yeah. Come on, mate.
Yeah,
exactly.
Back to where you came from.
Yeah, exactly. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
And I think that inner critic, the thing that I really learned about my own inner critic is that it was actually a lot of internalized voices from the past that I had made into my own voice, but actually came from my parenting, how I was parented, bullies at school, a really cruel teacher that I had, and it was like all of those messages on a very fragile child that didn't have a strong sense of self, and then you kind of internalize and turn those messages, and over time it becomes your voice, but it's really not your voice. And I think it was when I really got to understand that, and also that for me, I had two very critical parents, Tony. So I grew up with that, and then also all the other influences. Yeah. And to realise that in a really kind of perverse way, I was trying to parent myself with that inner critic the way I'd been parented. Does that make sense? Yeah. I was doing to myself what was done to me. Right. And so it was a way of actually parenting myself, but it was really dysfunctional. Yeah. Because my parents were dysfunctional in their parenting and as people. And so I had to really, first of all, get aware of that's what I was doing to myself, trying to parent myself dysfunctionally in the way I was parented. And that awareness is the first step to actually then doing something about it. Yeah. Which is what I did. And that's what I do in terms of my work, is then helping people to really follow the trail. So you go, okay, I'm telling myself that I'm not good enough, and I'm telling myself that I'm an imposter and I don't deserve this promotion. And then the next step, once you've got that awareness, is what I call follow the trail, where you go, okay, where did I first learn that I wasn't good enough? Where did I first learn that I didn't deserve? And follow the trail to the past, usually childhood, and then it's like joining the dots. And you go, oh, of course. Why wouldn't I feel like, in my example, a big voice of my inner critic was never good enough, not good enough, never. And like following the trail, two critical parents. Also, I had, like I said, this really judgmental, harsh, probably racist, as I look back, teacher from my childhood. And so, of course, why wouldn't I be saying that to myself? Because those were the messages that a fragile little girl got over and over again. You're just not good enough, Donna. So that's the first step. But then you have to do something about it, and that's beyond the mind. And that's really what that I do in my work, is to help people to really grieve what they didn't get, what they received as children and didn't receive.
Yeah.
And then the final stage of that, Tony, which is so important, is integrating, like we talked about before you started recording, integrating those parts of yourself into your being. And I feel so passionate about this, because this is the missing link for people often, is you understand that you feel not good enough, you're saying that in your inner critic, you know where it comes from, and then you grieve it, and then the next key step is then you say, okay, that part of me that feels not good enough sometimes is allowed to be here.
Yes.
Rather than what I used to do is symbolically kick her aside, say, you're not welcome here. The never good enough Donna is not welcome here. But instead, I kind of go, yeah, maybe there's part of me that in some situations will feel not good enough or never good enough, and that's okay. And when I did that, the really weird, wonderful outcome was that I didn't feel not good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Once I grieved it and integrated it into my being, then I was like, oh, that whisper, it's like that scream, as it used to be, of the inner critic, it went into a whisper, and now it's just day to day, it's just not there. It's just not there.
It's wonderful.
It really is. It's liberation.
Because I think one of the really nice things is when you don't care that much about what people think.
Yes.
And I think a lot of us do. And probably things like social media make that a lot worse.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that something that you've found changed as well with the work on the inner critic?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's that fine line, because I think we are also tribal beings, so we do need to belong. Yeah. So we do care.
We do care. You're never going to not care at all.
Not well. I don't believe that's that healthy, actually, because then you kind of go, I can do anything, and I don't care who judges me. Yeah. Exactly. Fuck them all.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested in is helping people to not have that kind of drip day-to-day effect of the inner critic, and actually to really be able to be in situations where you say, like me, I can stumble on my words with you, or I can forget what I was saying, as I did earlier and probably will do again in a moment, and not really feel like, oh, Tony must think I am a right twat. Tony must think I'm really stupid. And that's what I used to be like, always preempting how you would judge me for how I behave. Whereas now I'm kind of like, so I stumble on my words. Yeah. And if Tony doesn't like that, that's okay.
So it's acceptance, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is acceptance of yourself, and that you have all, we're so multi-layered, aren't we? But we attach ourselves to the identity of never good enough as the example. And it's actually that part of you not good enough, there's a part of you that is vulnerable, there's a part of you that's really strong and funny, and it's like welcoming it all, rather than saying these bits that are so-called negative I don't want. It's like, come on in.
Yeah. And what do you think? I know you get the Zestology newsletters every week, and you listen to some of the podcasts as well. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that's why I was just fishing for compliments there. But what do you think then about, obviously biohacking is quite a big theme, and kind of optimising one's health. What do you think about that in the context of also acceptance? Because there's no doubt that I've met quite a few people whilst recording this podcast, and I've thought the best thing you could do for yourself, and I might well be talking about myself here as well, is just to let go and accept and to chill out and to not be constantly filling in spreadsheets and trying a new supplement or whatever it might be. So what do you think about that when you read some of the stuff or you hear some of the stuff?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, acceptance is what most of us really aspire to, is to get to a place where you accept all of yourself, which is what I was just talking about, and that you're not constantly looking outside of yourself for something to be the next big health, solution. Yeah. But it's finding a balance with everything, isn't it, Tony? Yes. Because it's also nice to have a curious mind and want to learn more, and that's what I see in you, is that you're like, oh, what's this? I'll try this. And you're actually really open to stuff, things that you're like, oh, wouldn't normally wear these funny glasses, but I'm going to give them a go. Yeah, exactly. Oh, this might help me sleep, I'll give it a go. Yeah. And I think actually a curious mind and open heart to these kind of things is really healthy. But actually to achieve a state of acceptance is not as easy as you think it is if you haven't done your inner work. Because if you haven't, grieved what you didn't get, and on a very simple level, it's very hard because you fundamentally have a low self-worth, a low sense of self, poor sense of self. So it's very hard to then go, I'm going to accept my low self-worth if you haven't done your grief work, which is the inner work that we do.
And I haven't been to the bridge yet, but I really hope that at some point, once the baby's here and things have calmed down a bit, that I can.
Yeah, I hope so too.
But it sounds like I've done some similar stuff already. But sometimes when I and it's all good, and I'm bloody happy that I did it all, but sometimes when people say, so what was that, I can't remember. It's hard to explain. Do you find that sometimes people find it hard to articulate exactly what's gone on when they've gone through that process?
Yes, and I think often that's a good thing because it goes beyond the mind. And so when people say they come out of the bridge for something, they go, did that really just happen?
Yeah, goes beyond the mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's always like, if the mind gets kind of stilled or shut up, that's probably a good thing. And it's a bit like talking about the bridge. I'm really good at delivering the work, but actually somebody, when I was doing a addiction conference as a kind of talking about the bridge, and someone said, sell me the bridge in 3 sentences, and I just said no. Because one, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
It's not, you can't encapsulate this amazing, powerful experience in 3 sentences. And 2, I'm not a salesperson,
Yeah.
But it is also hard to kind of say. This is what we say to people at the end of the bridges, and they go, how can I go home and talk about it? Because out of context, if I told you some of the things that we do in terms of the rituals, out of context, you might go, like that.
Yeah.
But actually, when you're immersed in the work and you get that, what I say on the bridge is we give the intellect the knowledge that it needs to surrender to the emotional and I would say spiritual dimension of the work. So we give it food, so that when you're doing something like a ritual that your intellect might have previously wanted to judge, because your intellect already knows that there's Harvard-based research reinforcing the power of ritual for healing, your intellect kind of goes, okay, I get why they're doing this weird stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So there's research about ritual and healing, is there?
Totally, yeah. In the realm of grief, Harvard-backed research, which essentially they did 3 cohorts, and they did, I think it was one group that just did standard therapy, one group that did nothing, and one group that did rituals as part of their healing.
Wow.
And essentially the ritual came out ahead of the game over therapy and doing nothing. And it's like really the power that, and rituals, it's that thing, it's that unfortunate people have a reaction to the word ritual because they associate it sometimes negatively with religions or cults, but rituals are essentially ceremonies.
Yeah, it's a ceremony.
It's a ceremony that and often honours transition, so like getting married, having a baby. There's usually rituals around these things. Yeah. And funerals, etc. And so what we do is we incorporate beautiful ceremonies to honour, for example, when people grieve their childhood, to honour that, because it's massive, Tony, to actually really, really go back for the child in you that was sent to boarding school or wasn't loved in the way that they needed, and to really go back for that part of yourself, and like I said, grieve it. And you do that in a ritual form, like Harvard has proven. Yeah. It's beautiful and highly effective. And
in our old societies and our old communities, we probably had a lot more ceremonies.
Totally.
I was reading something the other day saying how quickly culture is changing now, because mainly because of globalization and the internet and everything else. But in fact, it might have even been Gabor Mate's book on holding it's called Hold On To Your Kids, which we've been talking about, and Gabor was a guest on the podcast. And I know you're going to Gabor's workshop, aren't you?
I am.
In June. And he was saying that children or young people are now making their own culture. So 500 years ago, or even 100 years ago, we would pass our culture down to our kids. But now, Facebook, the guy who runs Facebook is, young and built it at university. So he's designing culture for his peers, which isn't healthy. That's the point.
I guess there's elements of it that could be healthy, but I think there's a lot that is not, as we know. And I think that, you know, when I arrived and I was talking about being a grandmother and this kind of idea of the eldership, and the reason that I came back from my lovely warm country where I lived to England was because I didn't want my grandsons to not have a sense of their lineage and to really have a sense of an elder in their life in the form of a grandmother. And so I think it's, you know, those kind of ceremonies that, you know, it's so easy to ridicule. You know, it's like one journalist that came on the bridge, she said, I realise it's actually such a I can't remember what she said exactly, but it was like, it's such an easy shot to kind of go to take the mickey out of ritual and ceremony. It's easy. If you do it out of context without your heart involved, you can go, oh please, sitting around a fire singing please kumbaya, ha 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 ha. But actually the kind of the more deeper inquiry around it can really show you that people have been sitting around fires. By the way, we don't sing kumbaya. But you know, that's quite good. Yeah, why not? But you know, the point is that that people have been sitting around fires for eons, you know, and actually there's something when you get beyond the judgment of the inner critic. Oh, really? We're going to sit around a campfire now? And you sit in community with a group of people, and you drink tea in silence, which is one of the things that we do on the bridge, as you stare into the flames of the magic that is a fire. Magic.
Oh yeah, I love a fire. Yeah.
That in itself is like lost to so many people, you know, and more people are recognising that. Like people leave the bridge and they go home and they create in their garden a fire pit. And they have, you know, like my friend, they've got a fire pit and they've got little young children. And then when they need family meetings, they go out and they light a fire and they have a talking stick and they go out and they sit around the fire and they pass the talking stick and they talk about what's going on and how they feel in terms of their family. Beautiful. Beautiful. And of course, if you want to, you can judge that. But I'm really interested in moving beyond judgment and really what works. And it's actually, you know, you get beyond the judgments and you sit around, as an example, a fire. And you feel that sense of community, Tony. And it's like people just say, I feel like this is the missing piece, just to be around a fire with a group of like-minded souls. It's beautiful.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think you want to be open-minded when you do any of this thing. Because as you say, being told about, you could talk about some of the rituals now, some of the ceremonies, and out of context it would sound weird and a bit woo-woo. And yet, it's also good to have a bit of a finely honed, inbuilt bullshit detector, isn't it?
Yes.
And I find, you know, like sometimes I'm not just going to blindly accept everything that I'm told is good and spiritual just because I'm told it.
Totally.
If you see what I mean.
I 100% agree. My
natural default is slightly sceptical, but I try and be as open-minded as possible.
Me too. Totally. I'm really, you know, and people are surprised when I say that. I say I've got one of the great things of coming from quite a dysfunctional family as I did, so I've got a really good bullshit detector. I too have the capacity to kind of sniff out, and I think, you know, and there's so much stuff out there, and you have to, like you said, you have to really sort through what is meaningful and useful to people, including myself. But I'm also, there's a part of me that if I heard about some of the things of the bridge, you know, 15, 20 years ago, I would have been rolling my eyes and please. But actually, I'm interested in results. And so when you go through the process, as many people have done, and then you feel the difference, and you feel that emotional declutter, and you feel lighter, and you live from a more authentic place, and you're all right with your flaws, and this inner critic has calmed down. Who cares if you've had to sit around a fire or chant to get there? Do you know what I mean? It's like. And by the way, that's not all we do. But
I do like a bit of chanting, though.
I love a bit of chanting.
I'm a good chanter.
Are you? I can imagine, actually, because you've got quite a...
No, I really get involved.
You've got a great voice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you have.
Well, next time you organise a chant, then I'll be there.
Well, funny you should say that, because after this meeting, Tony, I'm meeting a friend and a colleague, and we're organising what's called might not be called this, but it's essentially a World Grief event, and it's a coming together. It's going to be people coming together voluntarily to grieve about what's happening in the world, and it will include chanting.
Wow.
So I'll keep you posted.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, because on the bridge we work with people's individual grief, but there's a global aspect of the work. So I always say, and I don't mean this to sound harsh, but I say that I'm interested in supporting you to grieve your individual pain. One, because I want you to feel that you can live a happier life, and so, but also the knock-on effect of that, which is what I'm really interested in, is so that you are a better parent to your son, that you're kinder to your partner, that you're kinder to the man on the street and compassionate, and that ripple effect on that becomes a global healing experience. And that's really the kind of, that's what I call my secret, not so secret mission, Tony, is I tell everyone about it, but really what I'm interested in is beyond the self, where you look up from your own pain when you've grieved it, and you kind of go, how can I love more, how can I serve more? And that's what this World Grief event is going to be about, is looking beyond the self and going, look, there's all this terrible stuff that's happening out in the world. What can we do about it to actually face it, rather than just look on Facebook? Because again, if you just live what I call neck up, you can become quite desensitized to anything that doesn't affect your world. And it's like, oh yeah, I know there's all this shit going on, but I'm not really interested. And actually what we're offering in this experience is for people to come together, and it's not all just going to be wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's just it's like a let's just really explore together what it means to live in the world that's in such chaos, and then how can we collectively grieve that, so that it can maybe or maybe not just add a little bit more lightness into the world. Because that's what I'm interested in, is more and more generating more goodness in the world.
The woman who loves grief.
I love a bit of grief, Tony. Love a bit of grief.
So you've got to be in Westbourne Grove in an hour. So I'm going to almost wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
And get the 2 books that you bought me. Normally I ask for a book recommendation, but you know I love books, and you bought me 2.
Yes.
So what are these 2 books that you bought me?
Oh, okay. I had planned my recommendation.
Oh, I did?
But yes.
Oh, all right, okay. Well, tell me briefly about those, and then your recommendation.
And then you can decide which one you can decide which one you're going to edit out. It's like,
we'll have 3.
Yeah,
we'll have 3.
Okay, call me greedy. It's all about abundance. So the first book is called How to Stay Sane by Philippa Perry, and she's a psychotherapist, I believe. And I just loved it. It's from the School of Life series. It's simple, it's small, and it's actually also profound, which I like. That kind of, it's presented in a simple fashion, and not dumbing down, but just clear. And it's also, what she's saying is also quite profound, and it's basically the ways to stay sane in a mad world.
Fantastic.
And then you have The Genius in All of Us, which I've confessed to you is one of my books that I haven't read. And I thought you might, and it's really talking about, as I understand it, it's really about this idea that you're not born with genius, that you is something that you can cultivate, and what genius means. And I thought you'd like that. I saw that.
Yeah, it's very kind of you.
That was my Kondo moment, where I thought, this is one that I'm going to declutter and clutter Tony's book.
And then what was the book that you prepared? The
book that I prepared earlier was a book, because so much about the inner critic is about the past, and as you know, I'm interested in the past in order that we can live more present to ourselves and our lives. And so the book that I found really helpful, and still do, is a book called When the Past is Present by David Rico. David Rico is a psychotherapist and an author, a Buddhist. He's a fascinating man. He's very well known in America, not so well known here. But it's the best book on understanding how your past influences your relationships with yourself and your intimate others and the world. How and why we react, for example, to authority. Almost always about our parents, by the way, because they were authority figures.
Interesting. Because I've got a very interesting relationship with authority. I don't like to tell what to do at all.
There's another podcast right there.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow, so that sounds very good.
I think you'd really enjoy it. It's it's really unpacking how we transfer our past, transference, onto our present relationships. And some people have their whole think about intimate relationships, Tony, as an example, when they are literally in what I call a transference trance. So it's almost like you with your partner, if you were constantly subtly or not so subtly reacting to her as if she was your mother, as an obvious one. And so you then start to see her unconsciously through what I call like this trance, this veil of your mum. So you're not even seeing your partner. You're just reacting constantly to who your mother was to you. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So it's and this is the best book on transference that I've read. I love it. It's quite a cognitive piece of work, but there's a place for that, and I know you like a bit of cogitating. I know that's
cogitating.
Cogitating. And cogitating,
What about one tip then for living with more energy?
Yeah, I thought about this on the train journey here, and I was thinking one tip for more energy is really around what I would call personal inquiry, which is more than journaling, but it's asking yourself. So when you have this inner critic, as an example, so living without an inner critic naturally gives you more energy, vitality and motivation. And so one of the key things is we need to question our thoughts. And that's where personal inquiry is really important. So do you know the work of Byron Katie? Yeah. So those 4 questions, is it true? How do you really know it's true, etc.? It's like to really not just buy into your thoughts, because so many people, Tony, they just believe what they think. It's like without any question, they just believe what they think. And it's like really to start to really inquire about your thinking will free you and give you more mind space, let alone anything else. So that's what I would say.
So we're not right about everything.
You might be.
Yeah. Apart from me, we're not right about everything. You're not right about everything.
No. Is that what's that? I can't remember if it was Byron Katie, but she talks about thoughts, negative thoughts being like bullies. I think it's Byron Katie. So she says something like they hunt in packs. And so if one comes up, the pack leader, and says to you, whispers in your ear, Tony, and they know your weak spots. So say you had a thing like, we continue the theme of not good enough. So one goes, "You're not good enough, Tony." And then depending on whether you react or respond to that, the pack leader will go back to the other little thoughts and go, we got a right one here. He just believes that. Come on. And then they come in and they're like, and they're hunting in their packs, and they're like, and you're stupid, and this and that. They hunt in packs. So you have to question your thoughts. That's the tip that I would offer to people. Don't believe everything you think. Really question it, and it gives you naturally more energy.
Thank you for that. It's good.
You're welcome.
So where can people find out more about you and the Bridge Retreats as well?
So we have obviously a website, which is thebridgeretreat.com, and then we're also on obviously social media, so Instagram.
More clutter.
And more clutter arriving.
Let's leave it this
time. Brilliant, yeah. So on Instagram it's at the Bridge Retreat and at Donna Lancaster, but be warned, there is a danger of seeing pictures of me with my grandchildren, and if you're not interested in that as well as the other stuff, don't follow that. Just go for the Bridge Retreat.
Okay, I just went to get that bit of clutter. Minimalism life, to stop ordering stuff. Good. Okay, so I think we can put up with the old picture of you with your grandkids.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much. Really good to see you as always.
And
you've got to go and organise the World Grief Day now, which is really exciting. So keep me posted on that.
I will do. Okay. Definitely. Thanks, Tony.
That's it. Thank you to Donna. Thank you for listening to Zestology. All the past episodes are at tonywrighton.com. And if you enjoy the hacks element of this podcast, supplements, gadgets, lifestyle practices, and so on, head to tonywrighton.com/hacks, where I've gathered some of my favourite ones all in one place. Okay, thanks as always. See you next time.